You've been told that transformation takes years, that changing your life requires struggle, discipline, and grinding through resistance. But what if I told you that quantum shift isn't just possible, it's actually inevitable once you understand how consciousness really works? And here's the warning I need to give you up front. Once you truly get this, there's no going back to who you were. Your old identity, your old limitations, your old story about what's possible, they'll literally become incompatible with your new reality. I'm talking about a shift so fundamental that it happens at the quantum level of your being. Not metaphorically, but literally. Because here's what they don't want you to know. Every single moment, you're already shifting between quantum states of possibility. The only difference between people who experience miraculous transformation and those who stay stuck is awareness of this process and how to work with it instead of against it. You see, most people are trying to change from the level of behavior and action. They're pushing and forcing and trying to willpower their way into a new life. But quantum shift happens at the level of being, at the level of your fundamental frequency, your core vibration. And when that shifts, everything else has to reorganize around it. It's not optional, it's physics. Let me share something that might blow your mind. In quantum mechanics, there's something called the observer effect. Simply put, the act of observation changes what's being observed. At the subatomic level, particles exist in what's called superposition, meaning they're in all possible states simultaneously until they're observed. The moment consciousness focuses on them, they collapse into a specific reality. Now here's where it gets fascinating for your life. You are both the observer and the observed. Your consciousness is constantly collapsing possibilities into your experienced reality. But here's the kicker. Most people are unconsciously observing from their old identity, their old story, their old limitations. So they keep collapsing the same old reality over and over again. But when you have a quantum shift, you literally become a different observer, and a different observer collapses different possibilities. This isn't positive thinking or visualization. This is fundamental physics applied to consciousness. When your core identity shifts at the quantum level, your entire reality has to reorganize to match that new frequency. Think about water for a moment. At 32 degrees, it's ice, solid, rigid, stuck in form. At 33 degrees, it becomes liquid, flowing, adaptable. Same H2O molecules, but completely different properties, completely different possibilities. That 1 degree shift changes everything about what water can do and where it can go. Your consciousness works the same way. There's a critical point, a quantum threshold, where one small shift in your core frequency changes everything about what's possible for you. And here's what's beautiful. You don't have to shift everything at once. You just have to reach that critical point where your old identity becomes unstable and your new identity becomes inevitable. I've seen this happen thousands of times. Someone will be struggling for years, trying to change their circumstances, trying to manifest something different, hitting the same walls over and over. Then something shifts at the quantum level, usually in a moment, and suddenly everything starts flowing. Opportunities appear, synchronicities multiply, their entire experience of reality transforms. But here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't about getting something or achieving something external. Quantum shift is about becoming someone fundamentally different. It's about your core identity, your base frequency, your default way of being in the world shifting to a higher order of organization. Let me tell you about Sarah. She'd been trying to build her business for 3 years, working 18-hour days, following every strategy, pushing and grinding and forcing. But she was operating from an identity of struggle, of having to prove herself, of not being enough. Every action she took was filtered through that frequency, so even when she worked harder, she kept creating more struggle. Then one day, something clicked. She realized she was trying to build success from a frequency of lack. She was trying to prove her worth instead of operating from inherent worth. In that moment of recognition, her core identity shifted. She stopped being someone who had to earn success and became someone who naturally expressed success. Within 30 days, everything changed. Not because she was doing different things, but because she was being different. The same actions, the same strategies, but filtered through a completely different frequency. Her business tripled, opportunities flowed, collaborations appeared out of nowhere. From the outside, it looked like sudden luck. From the inside, it was quantum shift. This is what I mean by becoming a different observer. Sarah literally became a different person, observing different possibilities. Her old identity could only see struggle and limitation. Her new identity could see flow and abundance. Same circumstances, different observer, completely different reality. Now here's where most people get confused. They think quantum shift is about changing their thoughts or their beliefs. But thoughts and beliefs are surface level. Quantum shift happens at the level of identity, at the level of who you fundamentally know yourself to be. And identity isn't mental, it's energetic. It's your core frequency, your base vibration, the signal you're broadcasting to the quantum field. The quantum field responds to who you're being, not what you're thinking. You can think positive thoughts all day long, but if your core identity is broadcasting lack, struggle, or limitation, that's what the field will mirror back to you. But when your identity shifts, when your core frequency changes, the field has to respond differently. It's not personal, it's physics. Here's something that might surprise you. Quantum shift often happens through what feels like breakdown or crisis, because your old identity has to become unstable before your new identity can emerge. It's like a caterpillar dissolving into soup before becoming a butterfly. There's a phase where the old form has to completely let go before the new form can organize. I remember my own quantum shift moment. I'd been trying to force my way to success for years, believing I had to work harder than everyone else, prove myself constantly, earn my place in the world. I was exhausted, burned out, but afraid to stop because I thought stopping meant failing. Then I hit a wall so hard I had no choice but to surrender. In that moment of complete letting go, something fundamental shifted. I realized I'd been trying to become successful instead of recognizing I already was successful, just expressing it in limited ways. My entire identity reorganized around that recognition. Everything changed, not gradually, but instantly. The same work became effortless. The same goals became inevitable. The same challenges became opportunities. I didn't become a different person. I became who I actually was underneath all the conditioning and limitation. This is the paradox of quantum shift. You don't become someone new. You become who you've always been at the deepest level. You strip away everything that isn't authentically you, and what remains is your true frequency, your natural state of being. And your natural state is always higher, always more powerful, always more abundant than your conditioned state. But here's the warning I mentioned. Once you experience this, you can never go back to unconscious living. Once you know you're the observer creating your reality, you can't pretend you're a victim of circumstances. Once you feel your natural frequency, settling for limitation becomes impossible. Once you know who you really are, playing small becomes literally painful. This is why some people resist quantum shift even when it's available to them. Part of them knows that their old life, their old identity, their old story will die. And even if that old story was limiting and painful, it was familiar. It was known. Quantum shift requires you to be willing to die to who you've been to become who you're meant to be. Are you starting to feel something shifting just hearing this? That's not coincidence, that's resonance. Your consciousness is recognizing truth at the quantum level. Your true identity is stirring, remembering itself. This is how shift begins, with recognition, with resonance, with remembering what you've always known at the deepest level. The beautiful thing about quantum shift is that it doesn't require you to figure out how. It doesn't require you to have a plan or a strategy or a step-by-step process. It requires you to become available to who you really are. It requires you to stop defending your limitations and start embodying your potential. Think about a radio for a moment. When you want to hear a different station, you don't try to change the music that's playing. You don't argue with the current frequency or try to convince it to be different. You simply tune to a different frequency, and different music automatically appears. The music was always there, you just weren't tuned to receive it. Your life works the same way. All possibilities exist simultaneously in the quantum field. The life you want, the person you're meant to be, the reality you're calling in, it's already there. You don't have to create it or manifest it or make it happen. You just have to tune to the frequency where it already exists. But here's what's tricky. You can't tune to a new frequency from your old identity. Your old identity is literally tuned to your current reality. To access new frequencies, new possibilities, new realities, you have to be willing to let your identity shift. You have to be willing to become the person who naturally receives what you're calling in. This is where most people get stuck. They want their life to change, but they want to stay the same person. They want new results, but they want to keep their old identity. But quantum shift doesn't work that way. New realities require new identities. Different frequencies require different observers. Let me ask you something. Who would you have to become for your dream life to be inevitable? Not what would you have to do, but who would you have to be? What frequency would you have to embody? What identity would you have to inhabit? Because here's the secret. That person already exists within you. That frequency is already available to you. That identity is already who you are at the quantum level. The only thing standing between you and quantum shift is your attachment to who you think you have to be, based on your past, your conditioning, your story about what's possible. Your past doesn't determine your future unless you keep choosing the same identity. Your circumstances don't define your possibilities unless you keep observing from the same frequency. Your story doesn't limit your potential unless you keep telling it from the same perspective. Quantum shift is available to you right now in this moment, because this moment is where all possibilities exist. The question isn't whether you can shift. The question is whether you're willing to let go of who you've been, to become who you're meant to be. And here's something beautiful. The moment you become willing, the shift begins. The moment you stop defending your limitations, your potential starts emerging. The moment you stop trying to change from the outside and start allowing transformation from the inside, everything becomes possible. Are you feeling it? That stirring, that recognition, that sense of something awakening within you. That's your true identity remembering itself. That's your natural frequency starting to emerge. That's quantum shift beginning to happen. But we're just getting started, because understanding quantum shift intellectually is one thing. Actually embodying it, actually living it, actually becoming it, that's where the real magic happens, and that's where we're going next. So here's what I want you to do right now. Take a moment and feel into who you would be if all limitations dissolved. Not what you would have or what you would do, but who you would be. Feel that frequency, that energy, that identity, because that's not fantasy. That's your quantum potential. That's who you're becoming. Ready to go deeper into how this actually works at the cellular level, at the energetic level, at the quantum level of your being. Because here's where it gets really fascinating. Most people think transformation happens in their mind, but quantum shift actually happens in your cells, in your nervous system, in the very fabric of your being. Your body is literally a quantum field organized by consciousness, and when your consciousness shifts, your entire biological system has to reorganize to match that new frequency. Scientists have discovered that your heart generates an electromagnetic field that's 60 times greater in amplitude than your brain, and can be detected several feet away from your body. This isn't metaphysical theory. This is measurable science. Your heart is literally broadcasting your internal state to the quantum field around you, and the field is responding by organizing circumstances that match that broadcast. When you're operating from fear, limitation, or lack, your heart rhythm becomes chaotic and incoherent. This chaotic signal gets broadcast to the field, and the field mirrors back chaotic, limited circumstances. But when you shift into coherence, when your heart rhythm becomes smooth and ordered, you're broadcasting a completely different signal, and the field has to respond with coherent, flowing circumstances. This is why quantum shift often feels like falling in love or having a spiritual awakening. Your entire system comes into coherence, your heart opens, your frequency elevates, and suddenly you're broadcasting pure potential to the field. Everything around you starts organizing differently because you're literally emanating a different signal. I want you to think about the last time you fell in love, or had a breakthrough, or felt completely aligned with life. Remember how everything seemed to flow? How synchronicities appeared everywhere? How opportunities opened up that weren't there before? That wasn't coincidence. That was coherence. You were broadcasting from your heart instead of your fear, and reality reorganized to match that frequency. But here's what's profound. You don't need external circumstances to create that coherence. You can generate it internally through what's called embodiment. Embodiment is when you become the frequency you want to experience before you see evidence of it in your external world. It's when you inhabit the identity of who you're becoming so completely that your nervous system, your cells, your entire being starts broadcasting that new reality. Most people are waiting for their circumstances to change so they can feel different. But quantum shift works in reverse. You feel different first, you embody the new frequency first, you become the new identity first, and then circumstances reorganize to match that internal shift. You become the cause instead of the effect. Let me tell you about Michael. He was stuck in a job he hated, struggling financially, feeling completely powerless to change his situation. Every day he would wake up dreading his life, feeling trapped, broadcasting that frequency of limitation and struggle. And every day his circumstances would mirror back exactly what he was emanating. Then he learned about embodiment. Instead of waiting for his job to change, he started embodying the frequency of someone who loved their work. Instead of waiting for money to appear, he started embodying the frequency of abundance. Instead of waiting for opportunities, he started embodying the frequency of possibility. At first, it felt like pretending. His mind kept saying, "This isn't real. You're still stuck. Nothing has changed." But he kept practicing embodiment anyway. He would spend time every morning feeling into who he was becoming, inhabiting that identity, broadcasting that frequency from his heart. Within weeks, something shifted, not in his circumstances initially, but in his presence, his energy, his way of being in the world. People started responding to him differently. Conversations started happening that never happened before. Ideas started coming that never came before. He was the same person in the same job, but he was broadcasting a completely different signal. Then the quantum shift accelerated. A colleague mentioned an opportunity he'd never heard about. A friend introduced him to someone who became a business partner. A skill he'd forgotten about suddenly became valuable in the marketplace. Within 6 months, his entire life had transformed. Not because he forced change, but because he embodied change first. This is the power of embodiment. When you become the frequency internally, the external world has to reorganize to match it. It's not magic, it's physics. The field always mirrors what you're broadcasting, but most people are unconsciously broadcasting their current limitations instead of their future potential. Here's something that might challenge everything you've been taught about manifestation. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. You don't get what you think about. You get what you embody. You don't manifest from desire. You manifest from identity. And identity isn't what you think about yourself, it's what you know about yourself at the cellular level. Your cells are constantly listening to your internal dialogue, your emotional state, your energetic frequency. They're literally reorganizing themselves based on the signals you're sending. When you embody limitation, your cells organize around survival and scarcity. When you embody potential, your cells organize around growth and abundance. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research on epigenetics shows that your genes are constantly being turned on and off by your environment, and your perception of your environment is more powerful than the environment itself. This means you can literally change your biology by changing your frequency. You can activate dormant potential in your DNA by embodying the person who naturally expresses that potential. Think about this. You have the same basic genetic material as every human who has ever lived, including the most successful, creative, abundant people in history. The difference isn't in the genes themselves, it's in which genes are activated, which potentials are expressed, which frequencies are embodied, and you have the power to activate any potential that exists within human consciousness. But here's where most people get tripped up. They try to embody a new frequency while still identifying with their old story. They try to feel abundant while telling themselves they're broke. They try to embody success while believing they're not good enough. They try to shift their frequency while defending their limitations. Embodiment requires what I call identity fluidity. It requires you to hold your current story lightly, as one possible version of yourself rather than the definitive truth about who you are. It requires you to recognize that identity is choice, not fate. You get to choose who you are in each moment, and that choice literally rewrites your reality at the quantum level. I remember working with a woman named Lisa who was convinced she was just not a money person. She had decades of evidence to support this identity. Failed businesses, financial struggles, a family history of lack. Her entire nervous system was wired around the identity of financial limitation. But when we started exploring her deepest essence, who she was beyond her story, something beautiful emerged. She realized that her natural frequency was actually one of abundance, generosity, and flow. She'd just been covering it up with layers of conditioning and limiting beliefs. So we started practicing identity fluidity. Instead of trying to convince her mind that she could be abundant, we started having her nervous system experience what abundance felt like in her body. We started having her cells remember their natural state of thriving. We started having her heart broadcast the frequency of someone who naturally received and shared wealth. At first, her old identity would kick in with all its evidence and arguments. This isn't real. You're just pretending. Remember all the times you failed. But she learned to acknowledge those thoughts without identifying with them. She learned to say, that's an old story and I'm choosing a different identity now. The shift happened gradually at first, then all at once. Her energy changed. Her presence changed. Her way of being in the world changed. She started seeing opportunities she'd never noticed before. She started having conversations that led to unexpected income. She started attracting resources and support in ways that seemed almost magical. Within a year, she'd created more wealth than in the previous 10 years combined, not through struggle or force, but through embodying the frequency of someone who naturally attracted and created abundance. Her external world simply reorganized to match her internal shift. This is what I mean by quantum shift. It's not about changing your circumstances through effort. It's about changing your frequency through embodiment and letting your circumstances reorganize naturally. It's about becoming the person who would naturally live the life you want to live. But here's something crucial. Embodiment isn't visualization or pretending. It's not about trying to convince yourself of something that isn't true. It's about accessing who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and limitation. It's about remembering your natural frequency and learning to broadcast it consistently. Every limitation you experience is learned. Every fear you carry is conditioned. Every story about what's not possible for you is inherited from others who accepted those same limitations. But your essence, your core frequency, your quantum potential, that's unlimited. That's where all possibilities exist. Think about a child before they learn what's supposed to be impossible. They naturally embody wonder, possibility, expectation of magic. They don't question whether they deserve good things or whether they're capable of amazing experiences. They just naturally broadcast the frequency of infinite potential. That child still exists within you. That frequency is still available to you. That natural state of embodied possibility is still your birthright. The only difference is that you've learned to cover it up with adult concerns, societal conditioning, and evidence-based limitations. Quantum shift is about unlearning those limitations and remembering your natural frequency. It's about stripping away everything that isn't authentically you and embodying what remains. And what remains is always more powerful, more abundant, more creative than anything you learn to believe about yourself. Here's a practice that can begin shifting your frequency immediately. Instead of asking, "How can I get what I want?" start asking, "Who would I be if I already had what I want?" Feel into that identity. Inhabit that frequency. Embody that version of yourself right now in this moment. Notice how different that feels from trying to figure out how to make something happen. Notice how your entire energy shifts when you move from wanting to being, from trying to embodying, from future focus to present moment identity. This is the difference between manifestation and quantum shift. Manifestation tries to bring something from the future into the present. Quantum shift recognizes that everything already exists in the present. You just need to tune to the frequency where it's available. Your dream life isn't something you need to create. It's something you need to tune into. The person you're meant to be isn't someone you need to become. It's someone you need to remember. The abundance you're calling in isn't something you need to attract. It's something you need to embody. But embodiment requires practice. Your nervous system has been wired around your old identity for years, maybe decades. It's going to take consistent practice to rewire it around your new frequency. This isn't about perfection. It's about direction. Every moment you spend embodying your potential instead of your limitations is rewiring your system for quantum shift. And here's something beautiful. The more you practice embodiment, the more natural it becomes. At first, it might feel like you're stretching into a new identity, but gradually, that new identity becomes your default. What once felt like pretending becomes your natural way of being. What once required effort becomes effortless expression. I've watched this happen with thousands of people. They start by practicing embodiment for a few minutes a day, feeling into who they're becoming, broadcasting that frequency from their heart. Then they start noticing small shifts in how people respond to them, how opportunities appear, how life flows. As they continue practicing, the shifts accelerate. Their nervous system starts expecting good things instead of problems. Their cells start organizing around thriving instead of surviving. Their heart starts broadcasting abundance instead of lack. And their external world starts mirroring back this new internal reality. But here's what's important to understand. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming who you actually are when you're not defending limitations. It's about embodying your natural frequency when you're not broadcasting fear. It's about expressing your true identity when you're not identified with your story. The person you're becoming through quantum shift isn't a fantasy version of yourself. It's the authentic version of yourself that exists when all the conditioning falls away. It's who you are when you're connected to your essence instead of your ego. It's your natural state when you're not trying to be anyone other than who you actually are. Are you starting to feel into this? That sense of recognition, of remembering something you've always known? That's your true identity stirring. That's your natural frequency awakening. That's quantum shift beginning to happen in your system. Because here's the thing. You can't hear this information without being changed by it. Your consciousness is already starting to reorganize around these possibilities. Your nervous system is already beginning to remember its natural state. Your cells are already starting to tune to a higher frequency. The question isn't whether quantum shift is possible for you. The question is how quickly you're willing to let it happen. How willing are you to let your old identity become unstable? How ready are you to embody who you're becoming? How available are you to let your life reorganize around your highest potential? Because what I'm about to share with you might be the most important piece of this entire puzzle. There's something happening in your nervous system right now that most people are completely unaware of, and it's either supporting your quantum shift or sabotaging it every single moment. I'm talking about what neuroscientists call your autonomic nervous system, and specifically something called your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is like the information superhighway between your brain and your body. It's constantly sending signals up and down, telling your brain whether you're safe or in danger, whether you can expand or need to contract, whether you can embody your potential or need to defend your survival. And here's what's fascinating. Your vagus nerve doesn't distinguish between actual physical danger and perceived emotional or psychological threat. So when you try to embody a new identity, when you try to step into a bigger version of yourself, when you try to quantum shift into a new reality, your nervous system often interprets this as danger. Why? Because anything unfamiliar, anything that doesn't match your historical identity gets flagged as potentially threatening to your survival. This is why so many people self-sabotage right when they're about to break through. This is why you might feel resistance or fear or doubt when you start embodying your potential. It's not because you're not capable, it's because your nervous system is trying to keep you safe by keeping you the same. But here's what changes everything. You can train your nervous system to feel safe with expansion instead of contraction, with possibility instead of limitation, with your potential instead of your past. You can literally rewire your autonomic responses to support your quantum shift instead of sabotage it. I learned this the hard way. Every time I would start embodying a bigger version of myself, every time I would begin to step into new levels of success or abundance or impact, I would hit this invisible wall of resistance. My body would feel anxious. My mind would flood with doubt. My energy would contract. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't meant for bigger things. Then I discovered that this was just my nervous system doing its job, trying to keep me safe by keeping me small. Once I understood this, everything changed. Instead of fighting the resistance, I started working with my nervous system. Instead of pushing through the fear, I started teaching my body that expansion was safe. The key is something called nervous system regulation. It's about creating enough safety and coherence in your system that your vagus nerve can relax its protective vigilance and allow you to embody new possibilities. When your nervous system feels safe, your heart can open, your frequency can elevate, and your identity can shift without triggering survival responses. One of the most powerful ways to regulate your nervous system is through what's called coherent breathing. When you breathe in a smooth rhythmic pattern, usually about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. This sends a signal to your brain that you're safe, that you can expand, that you can embody new possibilities without threat. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you combine coherent breathing with embodiment, when you breathe yourself into the frequency of who you're becoming, you're literally training your nervous system to feel safe with your new identity. You're teaching your body that this expanded version of yourself is not only safe, it's your natural state. Let me share something profound that happened with a client named David. He was a brilliant entrepreneur with incredible ideas, but every time he would start to scale his business, every time success became real and tangible, he would unconsciously sabotage himself. He'd make poor decisions, avoid important calls, or create drama that would derail his progress. We discovered that his nervous system had learned to associate success with danger. Growing up, he'd watched his father become successful and then lose everything, and his system had concluded that success led to loss, that expansion led to collapse. So every time David started succeeding, His nervous system would activate protective responses to keep him from the perceived danger of success. But we didn't try to convince his mind that success was safe. Instead, we worked directly with his nervous system. We started having him practice embodying success while maintaining nervous system coherence. We taught his body that he could be successful and safe, expanded and grounded, abundant and secure. The transformation was remarkable. As his nervous system learned to feel safe with success, his self-sabotage patterns dissolved naturally. He didn't have to fight against them or use willpower to overcome them. His system simply stopped generating protective responses because it no longer perceived expansion as threatening. Within months, his business scaled beyond anything he'd previously achieved, and this time it felt natural, sustainable, aligned. His nervous system was finally supporting his quantum shift instead of sabotaging it. This is why some people seem to effortlessly embody success, while others struggle despite having the same knowledge, skills, or opportunities. It's not about worthiness or capability, it's about nervous system conditioning. Some people's systems learned early that expansion is safe, while others learned that staying small is the key to survival. But here's the beautiful thing. You can rewire these patterns at any age, at any stage of life. Your nervous system is neuroplastic, meaning it can form new patterns based on new experiences. Every time you practice embodying your potential while maintaining nervous system coherence, you're literally rewiring your system for quantum shift. And there's another layer to this that most people miss entirely. Your nervous system isn't just personal, it's also interpersonal. You're constantly co-regulating with the people around you, picking up on their nervous system states, influencing, and being influenced by their frequency. This is why transformation can feel so challenging when you're surrounded by people who are invested in your old identity. When you start quantum shifting, when you start embodying new possibilities, the people around you might unconsciously resist your transformation, not because they don't want you to succeed, but because your expansion might trigger their own nervous system responses around safety and familiarity. Your growth might highlight their own limitations, and their system might try to pull you back to the familiar dynamic. This is why community is so crucial for quantum shift. You need to surround yourself with people whose nervous systems are regulated around growth, expansion, and possibility. You need relationships that support your evolution rather than resist it. You need a field of coherence that amplifies your new frequency rather than dampens it. If you're feeling a sense of recognition right now, if something is stirring in you as you hear this, I want you to know that's your system, beginning to remember its natural state of expansion. That stirring, that recognition, that sense of possibility awakening. That's your nervous system starting to feel safe with your potential. And here's something I want you to try right now. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, let yourself feel into who you would be if your nervous system completely supported your biggest dreams. Feel into the version of yourself that exists when your system feels totally safe with expansion, abundance, success, love, whatever you're calling in. Notice how different that feels from trying to force or push or make something happen. Notice how your entire energy shifts when your nervous system is aligned with your vision instead of resistant to it. This is what nervous system-supported quantum shift feels like. But there's another piece of this puzzle that's absolutely crucial, and it has to do with what I call energetic boundaries. Most people think boundaries are about saying no to other people, but energetic boundaries are about saying yes to yourself. They're about maintaining your frequency regardless of what's happening around you. When you're quantum shifting, when you're embodying a new identity, you're essentially broadcasting a new signal to the field. But if you don't have strong energetic boundaries, you'll constantly be pulled back into old frequencies by other people's expectations, judgments, or energy states. You'll find yourself shape-shifting to match whatever environment you're in instead of maintaining your authentic frequency. Energetic boundaries aren't walls. They're more like a strong center of gravity. When you have a strong energetic center, you can be with other people without losing yourself. You can be compassionate and connected without taking on their limitations or letting their fears contaminate your field. I learned this lesson powerfully when I first started experiencing quantum shifts in my own life. I would have these incredible breakthroughs, these moments of clarity and expansion and possibility. But then I would go back into my regular environment, around people who knew the old version of me, and I would unconsciously contract back into familiar patterns. It wasn't that these people were bad or wrong. They were just relating to me from the frequency they'd always known. And without strong energetic boundaries, I would unconsciously match that frequency instead of maintaining my new one. I would literally shapeshift back into my old identity to to maintain relational harmony, but quantum shift requires you to maintain your new frequency even when others haven't shifted yet. It requires you to stay true to your emerging identity, even when people are still relating to your old one. It requires you to hold your new reality steady, even when your external world hasn't caught up yet. This is where most people lose their quantum shift. They experience the internal transformation, but they don't maintain it consistently enough for their external world to reorganize. They keep reverting to old frequencies in certain relationships or environments, which sends mixed signals to the field. The field responds to consistency. If you're broadcasting abundance in the morning but scarcity in the evening, if you're embodying confidence at home but insecurity at work, if you're holding possibility in some relationships but limitation in others, the field gets confused, signals and mirrors back mixed results. But when you learn to maintain your frequency regardless of external circumstances, when you develop strong energetic boundaries that allow you to stay centered in your truth, that's when quantum shift becomes sustainable. That's when your external world has no choice but to reorganize around your new internal reality. Think about someone you know who has a really strong presence, someone who seems to maintain their energy regardless of what's happening around them. They're not trying to control other people or situations, but they have this centered quality that's unmistakable. That's what strong energetic boundaries look like. And here's what's beautiful. As you develop stronger energetic boundaries, as you learn to maintain your frequency consistently, you actually become more loving, not less. You can be present with others without losing yourself. You can be compassionate without taking on their pain. You can support others without abandoning your own truth. This is the paradox of quantum shift. The more you become authentically yourself, the more you can genuinely serve others. The more you embody your own potential, the more you give others permission to embody theirs. The more you maintain your own frequency, the more you contribute to the collective elevation of consciousness. Are you starting to see how all these pieces fit together? Nervous system regulation, energetic boundaries, consistent embodiment, identity fluidity, they're all part of the same quantum shift process. They're all about becoming so aligned with who you really are that your external world has no choice but to reflect that alignment back to you. And we're about to go even deeper into how this actually works in your daily life, how you can integrate these principles into practical, sustainable transformation that keeps accelerating over time. Because here's what I want you to understand as we bring this all together. Quantum shift isn't a one-time event, it's a way of living. It's not something you do once and then you're done. It's a continuous process of choosing your highest frequency, embodying your deepest truth, and allowing reality to reorganize around that choice moment by moment. Every single day, you're presented with thousands of micro-choices about who you're going to be. In each conversation, in each decision, in each response to circumstances, you get to choose whether you're going to operate from your old identity or your emerging one, whether you're going to broadcast limitation or possibility, whether you're going to embody your conditioning or your potential. And here's what's profound. It's in these micro moments that quantum shift becomes permanent. It's not in the big dramatic breakthrough moments, though those are beautiful. It's in the consistent choice to embody who you're becoming even when no one is watching, even when there's no external evidence yet, even when your old patterns are calling you back to familiar territory. I want to share something with you that might be the most important thing I've said in this entire conversation. The version of yourself that you've been feeling into, that identity that's been stirring as you've been listening, that frequency that's been awakening in your system, that's not your future self. That's your present self. That's who you are right now when you're not defending limitations. You don't have to wait until your circumstances change to be that person. You don't have to wait until you have evidence to embody that frequency. You don't have to wait until other people see you differently to know yourself differently. You can choose that identity right now, in this moment, and reality will begin reorganizing immediately to match that choice. This is the ultimate secret of quantum shift. It happens now or it doesn't happen at all. The future is just a series of present moments, and in each present moment, you get to choose who you are. When you consistently choose your highest identity in the present, your future becomes inevitable. But I want to be completely honest with you about something. This path isn't always easy. There will be moments when your old identity feels safer, when limitation feels more familiar than possibility, when staying small feels easier than expanding into your greatness. There will be times when the people around you resist your transformation, when circumstances seem to contradict your new frequency, when doubt creeps in and whispers that you're deluding yourself. In those moments, remember this. Every single person who has ever quantum shifted, who has ever transformed their reality, who has ever broken through to new levels of success, abundance, love, or impact, has faced those same moments of doubt and resistance. The difference between those who break through and those who turn back isn't the absence of challenges. It's the commitment to their truth regardless of temporary circumstances. Your quantum shift is not dependent on other people believing in you. It's not dependent on having perfect conditions or ideal circumstances. It's not dependent on everything going smoothly or having all the answers. Your quantum shift is dependent on one thing only: your willingness to embody who you really are consistently enough for reality to catch up. And here's something I know about you. Even though we may never meet in person, you wouldn't be here, listening to this, feeling what you're feeling if you weren't ready for this level of transformation. Something in your consciousness called you to this information because you're ready to quantum shift. Your system is ready to remember its natural frequency. Your identity is ready to expand into its full potential. The stirring you've been feeling, the recognition, the sense of possibility awakening, that's not hope or wishful thinking. That's your quantum self emerging. That's your true identity remembering itself. That's your natural frequency starting to broadcast. So here's what I want you to do when this conversation ends. I want you to sit quietly for a moment and feel into the version of yourself that exists when all limitations dissolve. Feel into the identity that naturally attracts everything you've been calling in. Feel into the frequency that effortlessly creates the life you're meant to live. And then, instead of thinking about how to become that person, I want you to recognize that you already are that person. You've always been that person. You just learned to cover it up with stories and limitations and evidence-based thinking. But underneath all of that conditioning, your quantum self has been waiting patiently for you to remember. This is your invitation to stop waiting. Stop waiting for permission, for perfect conditions, for external validation, for more information, for fear to disappear. Your quantum shift is available right now. Your true identity is ready to emerge right now. Your natural frequency is ready to broadcast right now. The only question is, are you ready to let it happen? If something in you is saying yes, if something in your system is resonating with these possibilities, I want you to do something right now that might feel vulnerable, but will anchor this shift in your nervous system. I want you to leave a comment below with one word that captures the identity you're stepping into. Just one word that represents who you're becoming through this quantum shift. It might be abundant or free or powerful or loving or creative or successful, or whatever word captures the essence of your emerging self. Don't overthink it. Just feel into what wants to be expressed and let that word come through. Because when you declare your new identity publicly, when you let your quantum self be witnessed even in this small way, you're sending a signal to the field that you're serious about this transformation. You're telling the universe that you're ready to be seen as who you really are, instead of who you've been pretending to be. And if you're feeling called to go deeper into this work, if you want to be part of a community of people who are committed to quantum shift and supporting each other's transformation, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because we're just getting started exploring what's possible when you stop defending limitations and start embodying potential. But more importantly, I want you to know that your quantum shift matters, not just to you, but to everyone whose life you touch. When you embody your highest frequency, when you live from your authentic identity, when you quantum shift into your full potential, you give everyone around you permission to do the same. Your transformation ripples out in ways you may never fully understand. Your courage to be who you really are inspires others to remember who they really are. Your willingness to quantum shift contributes to the collective awakening of human consciousness. So this isn't just about creating the life you want, though that will happen. This isn't just about manifesting your dreams, though they will manifest. This is about stepping into your role as a conscious creator, as someone who came here to remember their power and help others remember theirs. The world needs you to quantum shift, not the version of you that's been playing small or hiding your gifts or settling for limitation. The world needs the quantum version of you, the unlimited version, the version that exists when you stop defending what's not possible and start embodying what is. Your time is now. Your quantum shift is now. Your true identity is ready to emerge now. The only question left is, will you let it?